All right, guys, welcome back to the 50/50 Showcase, episode 36, the first of five Sentinels. This is Astrologer. He is my Dark Blast, Invulnerability, Dark Mastery Sentinel. Sentinels are a archetype that was created by the City of Heroes Homecoming team. So it was not in the actual live game. It's a ranged attack archetype, and it combines range attacks with defensive shields like you'd find on scrappers, brutes, tanks, that sort of thing. So they have a high survivability, um, not super duper over the top high damage like blasters, or they don't have a lot of AoE attacks, that sort of thing. Um, and in my opinion, they're a little bit disappointing. Not because of the concept. The concept is fine. You kind of have this Iron Man sort of idea of being able to blast from range, but have a lot of you can take a lot of hits, take a lot of beating. Where I find they're a problem, at least for me, is with the vanilla-ness of their secondary sets. Their blast sets are fairly straightforward, but they do have some interesting tweaks here and there from like a standard just blaster set, so they're not identical. But their armor sets are so boring. They've taken pretty much a tank or a blaster or what? Sorry, a tank or a scrapper brute armor set and stripped it down to just the basic armors and gotten rid of the kind of cool, exciting things. There's really no ability to taunt. There's no much in the way of damage auras. There's really no debuffing auras. It's all just, defensive, resistance, armor, overlapping, and then some survivability. The set really doesn't do anything unique, right? It blasts, well, blasters blast, defenders blast, corruptors blast, dominators can blast some. It then has high survivability armor sets, which, okay, great. But there's nothing there for this archetype to uh, where I think it needs is some sort of debuffiness, some sort of aggro management tool, because it can take a beating. It has high survivability, yet you have no way to attract attention away from others. All you can do is blast, and you don't have a lot of AoE blast to draw a lot of aggro. You're not like the top damager on the team, so you're not going to draw aggro that way either. You don't have any ability to taunt or get some sort of debuff aura going around you. So it makes it hard to, I think, contribute meaningfully on a team. So that's what I mean by disappointing. I mean they're fine as a solo. They're essentially like a ranged scrapper. So they're good at that. They can range attack and survive. But they don't. They're really hard. I have a hard time slotting them for something that's interesting. At least my definition of it. So anyway, I'm gonna talk about each individual build that I have here, and then you can kind of judge for yourself if you agree or disagree. But here is my mids build for Astrologer. Now the builds themselves, I don't have I like them. They're high survivability. I try to make them as interesting as I can, but there's not a lot to work with, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. I do like their mastery sets are pretty well developed. Their ancillary power pools, so there is that. But anyway, taking a look, Dark Blast. Now before I get too much in each individual power set, what is Astrologer's thing? What is he supposed to do? He is just a really high survivability flying tank. I think I remember seeing the idea for this build on the Homecoming forums, a couple years ago when I first started playing, when I first discovered that the game was out again and the Sentinels, and I was looking for a build to go with. So this is my first Sentinel I ever played, and I got to 50. Super high survivability. He's essentially a flying tank. Um, and that's great, right? I love it. he does a great job with that sort of concept. But again, there's not much there that he does beyond he can survive, you know. So let's take a look at the build though. Dark Blast, the big thing here that this brings to the table as far as survivability, there's a couple things. One is just the to hit debuffs that you get in a lot of your attacks. Like Gloom has it, Umbral Torrent has it, Abyssal Gaze has it, Dark Obliteration has it, your anti-numbral ant numbral sounds weird. Antumbral beam. This has to hit debuff. So you got a lot to hit debuff, right? So if you take all this minus to hit, all this minus accuracy that you can pour on, combined of course with you've got some more with your dark mastery stuff. Let me scoot that up a little bit. You know, I've got smite that has minus to hit. Netherworld Grass has minus to hit. Engulfing Darkness, right? And I have Darkest Night. That's a T to hit debuff toggle. So between the blasts and the mastery, I got tons of minus to hit. And then when you combine that with the armor sets I have, the secondary invulnerability, I've got, you know, all these damage resistances, like, you know, physical damage resistance here, the smash lethal, temporary invulnerability, there's smash lethal durability that gives you resistance to toxic. Let's see, unyielding gives you resistance to your, you know, various mes effects. Environmental resist is, you know, environmental stuff like fire, cold, energy, that sort of thing. Invincible gives you defense. Tough hide is going to give you some more defense, some resistance to debuffs. So you've got all these, you know, different armors that you're putting together. So you combine that with the sheer amount of minus to hit that you can muster with your attacks, and then you throw in some defensive powers like hover, stealth, maneuvers, right? And this guy is really hard to hit, really hard to just stick damage on and put him down. Because even if you do start beating on him, he has dull pain to heal himself. He's got life drain to heal himself. He's got durability, which is, you know, the boost to maximum endurance and maximum hit points. So he's got lots of ways just to get his health back, even if he does take hits. And so if you look at his total numbers, right, he's got, you know, 30-40% defenses in a lot of categories: smash, lethal, energy, negative, fire, cold. Positionals are in the 20s for the most part. So he's got really solid defenses. So you combine that with all the minus to hit I'm laying down out there, throwing Darkest Night out there, a debuff toggle. He's barely going to get hit. And then if he does get hit, he's got solid resistances, you know, 50% smash lethal. He's got 20 some percent with pretty much everything else. And Darkest Night also has the minus damage debuff on it. So even if you do get hit and you do take damage, damage is reduced when Darkest Night is on. So very high survivability. He can't be mezzed. Okay. He's got ways to self heal. He's got this layered defense, you know, that you see me do with many of my other builds. So this guy is really a nice flying tank. Okay. He can stick his nose in there. He can off tank if he needs to. He can be a primary tank, that kind of thing. But again, the problem though is, what else do you do? Right? You're looking at that the build, and that's kind of where my disappointment is I've got all the survivability, but what do I do with it? Right? I mean, I can't just obliterate a crowd with my attacks. You know, I've got some AoE, some cone, but not a whole ton of it, right? I don't have any sort of taunting aggro management effects or powers. I did build with a lot of the, you know, I purposely went after a lot of minus to hit, so I can debuff by virtue of blasting, but it's not through my armor set, you know. So that's my problem, I think, with Sentinels just in general, is that the armor sets are are lame, right? They've taken invulnerability, you know, cloned it over, and they've tweaked a couple of the powers, but they got rid of like the good ones that allow a tank to tank or a brute to be brutal, that kind of thing. You don't have any damage auras, that sort of stuff. You don't have any taunting auras. So you got all the survivability, and it's hard to like really leverage that on a team. You'll be like the last man standing in a lot of cases, but you sure couldn't do shit about saving your team. So anyway, that's where my beef is. That's where I wish that they had, you know, more, maybe control type of powers here in their armor sets, or some side of secondary effects of control, some secondary effects of debuff. Some sort of aura that's going to draw aggro. Maybe put some taunt-like effects in some of the blast powers. I don't know. I mean, I got survivability, but it doesn't really help my team too much unless I just keep unloading attacks. Now, that's sort of the negative stuff. Mostly that's my opinion, of course. You can play one and judge for yourself. But other than that, he's got Blast, right? He's got a Gloom. He's got Umbral Torrent, which is, I think the normal attack is called Torrents. That's the big old, knockback. This one is not as dramatic as I think that cone from Dark Blast, but it has some minus to hit in it. So I've got, the Thunder Strike slotted in a couple, three of my single target things that mainly the reason I'm doing the 4 or 5 slots is I'm looking for the accuracy. I'm looking for some of that defense that you can get with 2 slotting, sorry, 3 slotting, 4 slotting. And because I am using hover as my primary mode of transportation, the movement speed is nice with that one. The other stuff I've got with Umbral Torrent, I went ahead and put the Overwhelming Force universal set in it that has the knockdown to knockback, or yeah, the knockback to knockdown proc in it, so that the Umbral Torrent's not just going to throw stuff across the room. And it does give me some more defense with the 5 slotting that I've got here. So that's a nice useful. Let me scoot it up so you can see the pop up on that one. So it does have 5 slotted. You get the extra range defense. So most of my power choices, or not my power choices, but my set choices, were trying to get some of those bonuses, range, damage, not sorry, defenses, damage resistances. I've got Impervium armor. I went for the psionic resistance here, the psionic defense. I've got the Aegis in this one to get the other psionic resistance, right? Plus the movement speed with the 2 slots. The Impervium armor, I've got it over here in environmental resistance, so that's going to give me some more. Psi defense, I grabbed, what else did I take here? I've got some red fortunes, so I'm getting damage resistance, smash lethal, damage resistance, smash lethal, fire cold. All right, here's another Impervium armor to get the recovery. Plus, I said they already had the psi resistance here. The unique. See, these are not unique. I just was thinking about that. So I can sit here and stack multiple psi resistances with these Impervium armors. I went with Shirako's. That's going to give me, damage resistance. Going to give me some defenses. Positron, damage resistance. A little bit of recharge thrown in there. I've got the Dark Watcher sitting here. That's going to give me some recharge as well as some recovery. I've got a Luck of the Gambler over here. That's, got the 7.5% recharge. So I got some recharge that I can get going. I got an Unbreakable Guard going in here. Some damage resistance from that set. Focus Smite's got damage resistance, movement speed. You've got Theft of Essence. That's going to give you some more damage, some more healing. So I've got a hodgepodge of different sets, different bonuses, and it's all just adding up to an overall generic, all-in-one, can survive pretty much anything type of build. So he's not specifically built to do one thing. I didn't slot all my attacks with, let's say, to hit the buff sets. I could have done that, but I didn't. So he's just sort of a generic, broad category, lots of different effects and things. High survivability is what he really is. He's a flying tank, right? Then as far as the sets I went with for incarnates, scoot this up a little bit more so you can see that. Shift this down. I went ahead and grabbed Intuition as the alpha. This has hold duration, defense debuff, range, and hit debuffs. I'm really trying to get as much to hit debuffery as I can. So with that, you can take a look, for instance, and look at Dark Obliteration as my example here. The to hit debuff on Dark Obliteration as is out of the box is -5.25. With the Intuition Total Radial activated, okay, that goes to 6.3. So I'm boosting that an extra, 1.5% or so. So all my powers, once I have the, excuse me, the Intuition Total going, all my attacks that have all of that minus the hit debuff with the Dark Blast, the Dark Mastery, all of those powers are going to benefit from Intuition's to hit debuff. I don't think, any defense debuff. Range, I've mentioned this before in a few of my other builds. I like to have range if I can get it. And that's useful because this guy is a ranged attacker, so I can sit back and just start unleashing all these different blasts to keep stacking all that minus to hit. And then I have the increased hold because I do have a hold in this build. I think it's what, Abyssal Gaze, does that have? Yeah, Abyssal Gaze has a hold. I don't think I have any other holds on this, but so it helps with that a little bit as well to keep that power. So if I take a look at this guy, your hold is looking at about 7 seconds. So that's not bad for a single target hold. So I can lock down, let's say, a pesky lieutenant or something like that. Maybe a sapper, some sort of teleporter, whatever, like a sorcerer, something like that. Then I've also taken the Void because that has a massive, negative damage burst. I don't know if I have it tier 4 on live. I think I might have it tier 3. So if I do have it tier 3, then I probably went radial to get the minus damage side, but I'm ultimately going to go tier 4 with the final core here in order to just go for just raw damage. I took Diamagnetic for the same reason I took Intuition. This has a minus to hit proc in it, a minus regen, so that'll help versus AVs or tougher monsters, that sort of thing, lowered regen. But I went for the minus to hit procking. So if I have that hit at the same time as these other things, now my hit debuff is looking at 11.3% with Dark Obliteration. So, out of the box it was 5.25, whatever it was, 6.25, and then it went up to 6 something, and then now we're at 11. So I've, doubled the to hit debuffery power of Dark Obliteration. So I can hit you with that. Abyssal Gaze is going to lower you 11.3. Umbral Torrent has a minus 11.3. Gloom has a minus 11.3. So all these attacks are just going to do a whole ton of minus the hit debuff. Black Star's got minus 47%. Darkest Night is minus 17%. So just by having those couple of that alpha and that interface on the incarnates, that is really what, combined with the blast set and the mastery set, is what makes this a viable build. It's not really invulnerability, so I'm going to kind of go back and harp on that again. It's these armor sets really aren't doing anything special. What kind of makes this build special is what I've done with by combining the Dark Blast, the Dark Mastery, all that minus to hit, with Intuition's minus to hit, with Diamagnetics minus to hit. So all of that accuracy debuffing is what really makes this build survivable. The armors are great, and the armors are the armors, but it's all the other stuff. So that's where, like I said, I was a little disappointed with just the overall ATs because you really can't do much with the armor sets on this, on these guys. And that kind of finished this up, right? I took Ageless for more recharge. Right now, my recharge without Ageless is 101%, so that's good, right? I mean, I got a lot of recharge going, so I can fire and fire and fire away all my blasts to really keep layering that minus to hit. And then Ageless, puts that to 171%. So I've got tons of recharge and the ability to get, endurance back. And then I've also taken Assault Radial, the chance for double hits, so that'll give my overall damage a boost. Because I don't have too much AoE for a blaster type of character. I've got the Cone, Umbral Torrent, I've got Dark Obliteration, which is nice. That's a targeted AoE. I do have Black Star, but you don't have like your tentacles like you would have with a Dark Blast set itself. So I've got Cone, a targeted AoE, PB AoE, and then Golfing Darkness is another PB AoE. So this guy really can just go into melee range, Black Star, Engulfing Darkness, and Void. 1, 2, 3, massive PB AoE death combo, and plus all the minus to hit that stacks on, let's say, a group that I've got Darkest Night toggled on. That's huge, right? So he's going to be able to swoop in and just go nuclear at point blank range. All right, I think I've covered all the major stuff I wanted to speak about the build. Now, I know I've maybe come out sounding like, wow, Sentinels are terrible. I'm not saying that at all. They're really strong. They do what they do. Survive, range attack. My issue is that I wish there was more. There's more you could do with them. But there's just not your secondary set, in my opinion, is just really uh, weak, as in there's not a lot you can really do with it. You can slot it for defense sets, you can slot it for resistance sets, but what else? What else is there? So it kind of makes it boring. If there's a damage aura, some debuff stuff, that would be a little bit better. Some more controls. I don't know. Give me something to work with. I would be happier. All right, that's Astrologer's build. Let's go ahead and actually run some solo missions like I've done before. Run some team missions, so I can show you how survivable this guy is. Am I just talking nonsense, or is this true? This guy is a flying tank. We shall see. We will find out. Stay tuned.